Logan Paul, 29 million YouTube subscribers, a brand worth hundreds of millions, the poster child for a generation that turned cameras into cash machines and controversy into currency. But some lines should never be crossed, and some content should never be created. December 31st, 2017. Logan Paul uploaded a video from Japan's Aokigahara forest, the infamous suicide forest. What was supposed to be a travel vlog became one of YouTube's most disturbing moments, as Paul filmed and monetized actual human tragedy for entertainment. Tonight he faces Piers Morgan in the interview he's avoided for years. Gone is the manic energy and calculated chaos that built his empire. In its place sits a man who must finally confront the human cost of turning suicide into content for millions of impressionable young viewers. Paul's usual confident swagger seems forced as he adjusts his designer jacket. This isn't another podcast where friends enable his narrative. This is a reckoning with someone who has spent decades holding public figures accountable for their most damaging moments. Logan, thank you for finally agreeing to this conversation, Piers says, his tone carrying the weight of years of delayed accountability. I think it's time we talked about Japan. Paul nods stiffly. Yeah, man, I've been wanting to address this properly for a long time. But what Piers Morgan was about to reveal would force Logan to confront truths he'd spent years trying to forget. January 15, 2025. 7 years after the video that broke the internet and shattered the illusion that content creation had moral boundaries, the man who built an empire on outrageous stunts and manufactured drama now faces a different kind of performance, one where authenticity cannot be scripted and accountability cannot be avoided. His $50 million net worth, his boxing matches, his podcast empire, his cryptocurrency ventures, none of it can shield him from the conversation he has spent 7 years trying to avoid. The studio feels different from Paul's usual content creation spaces. There are no ring lights, no multiple camera angles designed to capture every reaction, no editing room where inconvenient truths can be removed in post-production. On Piers's desk lies a folder containing materials that read like evidence in a case against the commercialization of human suffering. Screenshots from the original video, testimonials from suicide prevention experts, messages from families affected by suicide who watched their tragedy turned into entertainment, and data showing the correlation between Paul's content and harmful behaviors among his young audience. This isn't just another celebrity interview. This is a moral reckoning with someone who represents everything wrong with influencer culture, the belief that attention equals value, that virality justifies harm, and that youth excuses the weaponization of tragedy for profit. Let's start with December 31st, 2017. Piers continues, his voice carrying the controlled intensity of a prosecutor who has spent months preparing an airtight case. You were in Japan filming content for your vlog. You decided to visit Aokigahara Forest. Walk me through your thought process that day. Logan shifts in his chair, immediately recognizing that there is no safe way to answer this question. Every response will either reveal callous indifference to human suffering or acknowledge premeditated exploitation of tragedy. We were making travel content, Logan begins carefully, his voice lacking the manic energy that characterizes his usual public appearances. Japan was this incredible, mysterious place, and Aokigahara had this reputation as being haunted, supernatural. We thought we were making an adventure video. The deflection is immediate, transforming a site known globally as a place where people end their lives into a supernatural adventure location suitable for entertainment. An adventure video. Piers repeats slowly, allowing the phrase to hang in the air long enough for its callousness to become apparent. In a forest where approximately 100 people commit suicide every year, did that context factor into your decision-making at all? The statistic lands like a physical blow. Logan's face tightens as the scope of human suffering associated with his adventure location becomes undeniable. We knew it had a dark history, Logan admits reluctantly. But we thought if we encountered anything, we would handle it respectfully. Respectfully, Piers echoes. And when you did encounter something, when you found the body of someone who had recently taken their own life, how exactly did you handle it respectfully? The euphemism "something" is stripped away, forcing Logan to confront the reality that his content featured an actual human being who had died by suicide. We filmed ourselves reacting to it, Logan says quietly, his voice barely audible. We were shocked, we didn't know what to do, so we just kept filming. You kept filming. Piers confirms, you found a human being who had ended their life in despair, and your instinct was to monetize that discovery for your YouTube channel. The progression from human tragedy to content monetization is laid bare with surgical precision. It wasn't like that. Logan protests weakly. We weren't thinking about money in that moment. We were young. We made a mistake. A mistake? Piers interrupts sharply. You edited that footage. You uploaded it. You created a thumbnail. You wrote a title designed to attract viewers. You enabled advertising on the video. That's not a moment of poor judgment. That's a deliberate decision to profit from someone's death. Each step of the content creation process is enumerated, transforming Paul's narrative of accidental insensitivity into evidence of calculated exploitation. I was 22, Logan says defensively, falling back on his age as mitigation. I was immature. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were old enough to understand that suicide isn't entertainment. Piers counters immediately. You were old enough to understand that someone's final moments of despair shouldn't become content for millions of children to consume. The mention of children in his audience adds another dimension to the moral failure, transforming personal callousness into potential harm to vulnerable viewers. I removed the video, Logan protests. When I realized how much pain it was causing, I took it down. After it had been viewed 24 million times, Piers corrects. After it had been shared across every social media platform. After millions of children had watched someone's suicide become entertainment. You can't unring that bell, Logan. The permanence of digital harm is established, that removing content doesn't erase the damage already done to viewers and to the dignity of the deceased. What were you hoping to accomplish with that video? Piers asks, shifting tactics. What reaction were you seeking from your audience? The question forces Logan to articulate his intentions rather than hiding behind claims of accident or youth. I thought it would be powerful content, Logan admits, his honesty clearly painful. I thought people would be shocked, that it would get attention, that it would show how serious and mysterious this place was. Powerful content, Piers repeats. You thought someone's suicide would make good television for children. When you say it like that, it sounds horrible, Logan whispers. It doesn't just sound horrible, Logan. It is horrible. And the fact that you couldn't see that until years later suggests a profound moral blindness that should terrify anyone who creates content for young audiences. Let's talk about your audience, Piers continues, pulling out demographic data. At the time you uploaded that video, what was the average age of your viewers? Logan's discomfort becomes more visible as the conversation shifts to the vulnerability of his audience. I don't know the exact numbers, he says evasively, but yeah, a lot of them were young, teenagers, some younger. 13, Piers corrects, reading from his documents. The average age of your YouTube audience in December 2017 was 13 years old. 68% of your viewers were under 16. You showed footage of a suicide victim to an audience of children. The statistics are devastating because they transform abstract harm into concrete endangerment of minors. I didn't think about the age thing, Logan admits. I was focused on making content that would go viral, that would get people talking. You got people talking, all right. Let me read you some of the responses your video generated. Piers pulls out printed screenshots, and Logan's eyes immediately focus on them as if they contain evidence of crimes he committed while sleepwalking. This is from the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. In the week following your video, they received a 35% increase in calls from teenagers asking about suicide methods. 35%, Logan. Your content didn't just exploit one person's death, it endangered countless others. The correlation between Paul's content and suicide-related crisis calls is perhaps the most damaging evidence possible. I didn't know that. Logan stammers, but his shock seems genuine. You didn't know because you never bothered to research the impact of suicide content on vulnerable viewers, Piers responds. You never consulted mental health professionals. You never considered that showing suicide to children might be dangerous. The negligence is revealed to be willful ignorance rather than innocent oversight. Let me help you understand more clearly, Piers says, pulling out another document. This is a letter from Dr. Sarah Martinez, a child psychologist in California. The introduction of expert testimony shifts the conversation from abstract harm to professional assessment of damage. She treated a 12-year-old patient who watched your video and became obsessed with suicide as a way to become famous, like the person Logan Paul found. That child required psychiatric hospitalization. The specific case of a child being hospitalized due to Paul's content represents the most concrete possible evidence of harm. A 12-year-old, Piers repeats, letting the age sink in. A sixth grader whose understanding of suicide was shaped by your decision to turn it into content. I never wanted to hurt kids, Logan says, his voice breaking slightly. But you did hurt them. And you hurt them because you prioritized your content calendar over their well-being. The psychological mechanism behind the harm, prioritizing entertainment over protection, is laid bare. There's more. Piers continues relentlessly. The Samaritans, the UK's leading suicide prevention charity, reported a significant increase in copycat behavior discussions on social media platforms following your video. The international scope of the damage demonstrates that Paul's influence transcended borders. Young people were sharing the video, discussing suicide methods, romanticizing the forest location. Your content didn't just exploit one death, it potentially inspired others. A 14-year-old in Manchester was found by her parents researching travel to Japan after watching your video. She had written in her diary about wanting to become internet famous through suicide. The detail about the diary entry makes the connection between Paul's content and suicidal ideation undeniably direct. How many children, Logan, have to contemplate suicide because of your entertainment choices before you take responsibility for the harm you've caused? Let me ask you about the business side, Piers says, his tone shifting to focus on the financial exploitation of tragedy. How much money did you make from that video before it was taken down? The question cuts to the heart of the commercialization of human suffering, and Logan's discomfort is immediate and visible. I don't know the exact amount, he says evasively. Approximately. Piers presses, 24 million views, premium advertising rates for your demographic, seasonal holiday pricing. How much? Maybe $50,000, Logan admits reluctantly. $50,000, Piers repeats, allowing the figure to resonate. You made $50,000 from someone's suicide. How does that feel? The direct connection between death and profit is stated with brutal clarity. It feels horrible, Logan responds, and for the first time his emotion seems genuine rather than performative. But you kept the money, didn't you? You never donated it to suicide prevention organizations. You never used it to fund mental health resources. You just kept it. The failure to make amends financially adds another layer to his moral failure. Let's talk about what happened after the backlash. Piers continues, you made apology videos. You took a break from YouTube. You promised to do better. But then what? I came back and tried to be more responsible with my content, Logan says, but his lack of conviction suggests he knows this defense won't hold up. Did you? Because within months, you were promoting cryptocurrency schemes to the same young audience. You were staging fake content for views. You were continuing to prioritize virality over responsibility. The pattern of behavior post-apology demonstrates that his remorse was performative rather than transformative. You turned your apology tour into content. You monetized your own remorse. You found a way to profit from being called out for profiting from death. The meta-exploitation, making money from apologizing for making money from suicide, represents perhaps the most cynical possible response to criticism. If you could go back to that day in Aokigahara Forest, knowing what you know now about the harm you caused, would you still film that video? Logan is quiet for a long time, clearly struggling with the implications of answering honestly. If I knew it would hurt people the way it did, he finally says, I like to think I wouldn't. But honestly, I don't know if the Logan Paul of 2017 would have cared enough to make a different choice. The admission that his younger self might have prioritized content over human dignity, even with full knowledge of consequences, is perhaps the most damning thing he could say about his own character. When you were building your audience, did you ever think about the power you were accumulating? Piers asks, exploring whether Paul understood the scope of his influence before he abused it. Logan looks up, his eyes red with tears that seem genuine, rather than performative. No, he admits. I just thought about numbers. Subscribers, views, engagement. I never thought about the fact that those numbers represented real people who were looking to me for guidance. What kind of messages do you get from your audience? Everything. Kids who say I inspired them to start boxing, to move to LA, to drop out of school, kids who copied stunts and got hurt, kids who invested in cryptocurrency because I promoted it. Each example represents a different category of influence, from benign inspiration to dangerous mimicry to financial exploitation. You can't have 29 million subscribers and claim you never asked to influence people. Influence is exactly what you asked for. The question is whether you're willing to accept the responsibility that comes with it. I don't know how, Logan admits. I don't know how to be responsible for that many people. I don't know how to make content that's entertaining but also safe. The confession of incompetence is stunning in its honesty, an admission that he has been operating without the skills necessary to handle his influence responsibly. When you think about the kids who watch your content, what do you want them to learn from you? Logan is quiet for a long time, clearly struggling with a question he has never seriously considered. I want them to learn that it's possible to make mistakes and grow from them, He finally says, "I want them to learn that success isn't just about money or fame, it's about becoming a better person." And what have you actually taught them? That tragedy can be entertainment. That apologies can be content. That influence doesn't require wisdom. Each lesson is stated with the clarity of someone finally seeing his own impact clearly. What are you going to do with this understanding? Piers asks as the interview approaches its climax. Logan straightens in his chair slightly, as if the question has given him something concrete to focus on beyond his own guilt and shame. "I'm going to completely change how I approach content," he says with quiet determination. "No more stunts that could inspire dangerous behavior. No more promoting things I don't fully understand. No more treating serious topics like entertainment." How will you implement that? "I'm hiring mental health professionals to review my content before it goes live. I'm working with suicide prevention organizations to understand how media can help instead of harm. I'm donating significant money to organizations that deal with the problems I've contributed to." How much money? $10 million to start. Logan responds without hesitation. To suicide prevention, mental health resources for young people, media literacy education. The financial commitment is substantial and represents a meaningful portion of his wealth. What would you say to other influencers who are making the same mistakes you made? Logan turns toward the camera, addressing his fellow content creators directly. Stop thinking about views and start thinking about viewers. Stop treating your audience like numbers and start treating them like the real people they are, people who trust you, who look up to you, who might make life decisions based on what you say. And to your own audience, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for prioritizing my career over your well-being. I'm sorry for showing you things that children should never see. I'm sorry for teaching you that attention is more valuable than compassion. The apology is specific and unqualified, addressing concrete harms rather than abstract offenses. "I can't take back the video from Aokigahara Forest. I can't undo the damage I've caused to how you think about suicide and mental health, but I can commit to never putting entertainment above human dignity again." As the interview concludes, Logan Paul sits transformed from defensive celebrity to chastened advocate for responsible influence. The silence that follows contains both the weight of lives endangered and the possibility of lives saved through the responsible use of unprecedented influence. Some platforms become forces for healing. Others become weapons of destruction. Tonight, Logan Paul chose which legacy he wants to build.